Welcome to National Update today. Lots of breaking news going on. I'm reporting out of Los Angeles. We've seen a SCOTUS ruling that is breathtakingly scary, and I'm going to go into full detail on that. And also, there's been reports of ICE activity in Chicago, and this seems to be an orchestrated plan that's being rolled out real time. SCOTUS made a ruling that basically opened the floodgates for ICE to come and raid all through Los Angeles and its surrounding areas. The Supreme Court just gave federal agents the power to arrest based on the color of your skin, the language you speak, and the job you do. This has deep and wide sweeping implications. And so you're probably thinking it sounds impossible that you could be detained and searched, because this gives a frisk power to ICE, who are civil, so they can basically grab anybody they like for any reason they like. There are restrictions. I'm going to go into that. But it's no longer probable cause. That's the Supreme Court has opened up LA to a new wave of being terrorized. Okay, so let's see what happened. Here's what the Supreme Court just made legal. And a 6-3 ruling lifting LA judges' ban on roving patrols based on race, language, job, location. They have removed that. There's the emergency docket that the Supreme Court has. Just think about it. The highest court in the land, Supreme Court, can basically override, and any appeals that come up to it, it makes a ruling on. That sets a precedent. Whatever that ruling is, the most recent one, becomes the precedent, and that informs all of the federal courts that is how that law needs to be interpreted. And so this particular ruling for LA has deep and far-reaching implications, not just for California and LA and the surrounding areas, but for the whole of the USA. Now, because it was a temporary order that the LA federal lower court judge had made, which had prevented ICE from going and grabbing people, what ICE has been doing is just grabbing people. But there's the potential for legal cases because of the Fourth and Fifth Amendments and things like that. You can argue overreach, and, if they can't justify probable cause, and with the cameras out and people recording these events, it really leaves ICE potentially vulnerable to a lot of litigation, and a lot of citizens can sue them potentially. And the thing is, though, with probable cause, you can't just grab somebody like reasonable suspicion, but reasonable suspicion allows a lot more scope. They don't need to have the highest standards of probable cause. Essentially, if you look Hispanic or Latin, if you're speaking Spanish, if you're a day laborer at Home Depot, bingo, that's enough. They can grab you on that basis. All your rights are now being overridden. Now, if they apply that universally everywhere, and this becomes the precedent, because once the case that's before the judge here in California, once there's a ruling made, and if that's appealed up and the same ruling is made on the final outcome, that becomes a precedent. It becomes the new interpretation of the law of the land, and they're essentially overriding the idea of probable cause goes out the window. Now, I don't know, it depends on how they rule it, if it just applies to ICE or whether it has an even greater reach. We don't know. But can you see how dangerous this can be? How many people out there watch some of these videos where it's like, know your rights and invoke the right to remain silent. You don't say anything and things like that. And that the police actually have protocols and that they can't just grab you, and that if you're on the street, they can't just drag you off unless there's a local state law that says they can, like the stop and frisk laws that were around at one stage. The scary thing about this one, though, the ruling that came through, Kavanaugh had basically said, yeah, it's okay. They can search you. So there was a restraining order in place that said, no, you can't go and grab people in Los Angeles to ICE. And the order was about roving patrols, because all they're doing is they're driving around. Oh, let's stop here at the supermarket. Oh, there's a street vendor. This is giving a civil authority that's only supposed to be focused on not citizens, only immigrants or visiting visa holders or tourists. Justice Sotomayor made a dissent to it. All three liberal justices dissented, including Sotomayor, and she said, quote, she won't stand idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost. Sotomayor says we should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low-wage job. And don't forget, that's for today. They can change that. They can change it to anyone, to any group. And whatever you are, if they have absolute power, and with this power too, what's to stop them? And we're already seeing troops coming into Chicago now, threats to New York. DC's already occupied. It's like an occupying power. Well, here's the thing. Now, the thing that worries me is that this was done through the emergency docket setup. So it's the emergency appeal, which was granted. So the Trump administration claimed irreparable injury from the limits that were set by the California judge. And the Supreme Court overturned the ban on stops based solely on race, language, job, or location. The ban on stops has been overturned, so it's no longer in place. So really that means that ICE is free to go and racially profile people. So just on your race, they can grab you. That's enough. Whereas probable cause, you couldn't do that. Well, in theory. In practice, who knows? ICE are good at trampling the Fourth Amendment. Language. So if you're speaking a foreign language, that's sufficient. They can grab you, chain you, put chains on your hands, on your wrists, on your ankles, and around your waist. They can strip search you. They can take all your clothes and possessions. They can try and confiscate your phone and try and access it. They put you in a cell. They put some disgusting jumpsuit that somebody else has worn, and yet Joe and Jill Average, who are fully law-abiding, whether they're an illegal immigrant or they're legal or they're a citizen, they just will sweep people up. We've already seen multiple citizens here in Los Angeles that have been picked up in these sweeps. And to add insult to injury, I remember one was actually then charged with obstruction because she just happened to be going to her work and she looked like she was Latin or Hispanic, and that was enough. They grabbed her. And this was a citizen. This is what the judge had stopped. And now they've not only brought it back, they've now made it reasonable suspicion. There are a few limitations with that, but it's really almost like a carte blanche license to grab anybody for any of these reasons at all. Reasonable suspicion. You look Hispanic and you're detained. The analysis on this is what's scary because it means that you can be walking a dog, you can be in the supermarket, and you can be grabbed. But before there was probable cause, this basically establishes what they were doing and was in breach of the law, and they were being filmed, which opened ICE and its personnel up to lawsuits. Is this like the next level? Is this the precursor to the Supreme Court then ruling that, yes, ICE has completely the power to detain anyone at any time, frisk them and drag them off somewhere? Anything that they can state as reasonable suspicion, which really gives them carte blanche. So immigration enforcement agents can continue to carry out roving patrols in California. So what's reasonable suspicion? This is basically how this can be interpreted. Speaking Spanish equals reasonable suspicion. Working at a car wash, a day labourer, landscaping, reasonable suspicion. So if you're a gardener, or if you're out in the field picking crops and things, yep, that's reasonable suspicion. ICE can come and say, oh, that's enough. Having a brown skin is reasonable suspicion. It's like that Kristi Noem send-up thing that was on South Park. If it's brown, it goes down. Because that's what's happening. I mean, this really sets aside due process. If you speak Spanish, if you're brown, if you're in some of these jobs, or just even one of those, they can come and grab you. So keep this in mind. This is not just an isolated thing. Constitutional protections are either universal or meaningless. The law should apply equally. And if the ruling stands that it's reasonable suspicion, you've got no rights. The Fourth Amendment, they found a way to circumvent it using the Supreme Court. What else can the Supreme Court turn on its head? See where this is going? So if this stands, and if it really is, reasonable suspicion becomes the standard for ICE, who don't have the same constraints because they're civil, which is a real loophole. I mean, I don't know how it's allowed to happen, but they're exploiting it. Fourth Amendment's gone. Okay, so constitutional crisis in plain sight. Fourth Amendment, protection against unreasonable searches, and that's gone for millions. The rights that you think that are there and you comfortably think they're going to remain, what this ruling that the Supreme Court has done, it's really overriding the Fourth Amendment. I'd like to hear more from constitutional experts on this, but I think even lots of them, I think this is new territory. And there's a point where the understood systems, once they're challenged and broken, there are radical changes. And that's what Trump 2.0 is doing. But that's the implication. Probable cause standard is replaced by reasonable suspicion. Secret police can hide in just plain clothes, don't have to identify themselves, can grab people, throw them in a van, and they disappear. And then it's very hard to prove that you are legitimate. Because how can you? You're now a prisoner. You didn't do anything, but you're in chains and then you're transported to these nightmares. 50 people to a room, hole in the floor for a toilet and things like that. Emergency docket abuse is the next thing of the constitutional crisis in plain sight. Bypassing normal legal process. Rule of law, habeas corpus, limits on who can be arrested. The kangaroo courts of the immigration courts, they're civil, so they're not under the same rules. The immigration courts are civil. They are an administrative judge that sits on those, who is appointed by the Department of Justice. Who runs the Department of Justice? Pam Bondi. So basically, they serve at the pleasure of the Department of Justice, and by virtue, Bondi. And quite often these, people that are being held are being denied legal access because it's civil. They kind of play this, and then they've shipped you off somewhere where it's hard to get to you. Anyway, 10 million Latinos that live in affected 7 county areas. 10 million. 10 million. That's bigger than some countries. By the way, in the surrounding area, LA, it's like 20 million people. Half the Central District population now meets a reasonable suspicion criteria. In LA, you're going to basically say 10 million people are all up for grabs and that their ICE is free to go and grab everybody. That's 10 million people here. That's half of the Los Angeles surrounding area. This is insane. How is this a good idea? My God, can you imagine the terror that people are feeling? And then you're dragged to these hellholes, to these black sites that are way out in some other crazy locations. You can be grabbed anywhere. Now, if you're in LA, they're going to grab you, strip you, put you in chains like you're a murderer or something. You can be just an average, benign, ordinary citizen or lawful permanent resident, because they can grab you by accident. Then, by the way, you have to prove in the immigration court that you are a citizen. I wonder how many citizens are under lock and key now in these black sites that are being denied access to legal representation and where there's no oversight. Imagine if you have a medical condition and you're taken by ICE. How many of these 10 million people, these are people just like you and me, and they can be grabbed. Why? Because of the color of their skin? Are you kidding me? Look at this. It just opened the door to being arrested by thugs just for walking a dog. And if people are saying, it's just LA, that's miles away from me, they don't care. Well, I'm in LA, so it worries me because everybody I know is terrified about this. And every time you even get into your car to go anywhere, in the back of your mind, you've got to be thinking, are they going to stop me? Are they going to grab me at the supermarket? Like, I'm going to get my milk or, get your groceries, and they can grab you just because they decided to raid and you happen to be there. Not because you did anything. These people aren't criminal. And it's not just undocumented people that are being grabbed. And some people are disappearing into the system. What's happening to them? Where are they going? There's no transparency on this. Doesn't this sound something like what happened in Germany in the 1930s? They were called concentration camps. I think they're dismantling everything systematically. And I'd use the analogy of a painting. How many dots can you take away from a painting before it ceases to be the painting? Well, for democracy, how much of it is left? This Supreme Court ruling, it's just another one along the way, but this one, it puts 10 million people at risk in Los Angeles right now to random imprisonment. If you're brown, you speak Spanish, And now they're acting like plainclothes policemen now, and they're infiltrating, and they've got surveillance that's got all your information. If you've got any digital footprint, and it's all aggregated. So it's not about immigration. It's not about the law. It's not about the immigration law. It's not about crime. This is something more. And that something more, is power. But not just power in a limited sense. This is another brick in the wall, another death by 1,000 cuts of democracy. That's what's happening.